Saturday, May 15, 2010. Two young men are on their way home from a party late night. On their way home, a patrol car approaches them. Soon, they quickly find themselves in the spotlight, surrounded by patrol cars. One of the officers tells them that a man has reported a robbery. Khalif quickly tells the police officer that he hasn't robbed anyone and that they can check him if they so choose. One of the police officers goes back to his patrol car and then returns and states that the man in the car has now changed his story and said that they robbed him 2 weeks ago. They are then shoved into the back of a police car. Khalif asks the police officer, "Where are we going? Like, what am I being charged for?" The police officer tells him, "We just have to take you to the precinct. You'll probably more than likely get to go home." That is a piece of an excerpt from the New Yorker Fall 2014. And that was also the beginning of a hellish 3 years for Khalif Browder. Khalif was a 16-year-old boy who spent 3 years on Rikers Island, New York, arrested with no evidence, held without having been charged or convicted of a crime. And the only thing Khalif Browder was guilty of was making a mistake once, being a black man walking home at night in New York, and not being willing to take a plea deal for a crime he did not commit. My name is Nevada Staples. I'm a black woman in a country that thrives off victimization, manipulation, and exploitation of the less fortunate. I wouldn't say I'm an activist, nor do I even claim to be a scholar or expert on the subject of social justice. But what I will say is that I am a soldier in the quest for change in any unjust practice or law that is used as a device of terrorism, especially when it's against their own people. Khalif Browder's life was taken from him at the age of 16. His experience proved 3 things. The justice system was broken, the prison system apparently is a free-for-all, and psychiatric care for individuals coming out of prisons need to be taken more seriously. 17 hours after Khalif's arrest, he was interrogated. His family at the time could not afford or did not have the money for his bail, which was about $3,000, which means they had to pay about $210 to about $450. And that's not a lot of money in the grand scheme of things, right? But for underprivileged people, it is. His family didn't really have the money, so they had to go and try to scrounge up the money. But little did they know that by the time they got to the bail bondsman in the morning, that they would be denied being able to get Khalif out of jail. Because unfortunately, Khalif was already on probation, and this arrest was considered a violation of his probation. After he was detained, his court dates began to get pushed back. Most of those pushbacks were because the prosecution was not ready, which resulted in him having to spend over 1,000 days of his teenage years in jail. And all the while everyone else is going on with their lives, Khalif was on Rikers Island, literally fighting for his life and trying not to take it himself. One day, when correctional officers wanted to find out who was the instigator of a fight, Browder, along with other inmates, were lined up and beat until they bled and until their eyes were swollen. Another day, a gang member spat in Browder's face, and later that day, Browder punched the gang leader in the face. And then 15 gang members jumped Browder. There's another instance where there's video footage of Browder in handcuffs being assaulted by guards. It was after a fight with another inmate, and then even after they beat him, they put him in solitary confinement for like 2 weeks. Browder spent nearly 2 years, that's an accumulation of 2 years, in solitary confinement, mostly after fights with inmates. Browder later said that while he was in solitary confinement, correctional officers came in and beat him when he was showering, and he said most verbal confrontations with guards ended in physical altercations. Even though through all of this time, Browder still tried to have faith that the system which was failing him, which was abusing him, was going to figure out that he was innocent and was going to set him free. While in prison, Khalif made several attempts on his life. He tried on multiple occasions to hang himself with strips of sheets from the light fixture in his cell. On March 13, 2013, Browder was offered a plea deal of a plea bargain. Browder was offered a plea bargain of immediate release for his admission of guilt to 2 misdemeanors with consideration of time already served. Browder refused, and he was sent back to jail. Later, a few months later, on May 29th, 2013, Browder was freed in anticipation of dismissal of the charges against him. The man who had pointed him out as the assailant moved back to Mexico. And this young man spent 3 years of his life in jail for nothing. When he first returned home, he seemed okay. He passed his GED exam. He enrolled in Bronx Community College. He worked as a tutor and also a security guard. And Khalif said this: "People tell me because I have this case against the city, I'm all right. But I'm not all right. I'm messed up. I know I might see some money from the case, but it's not going to help me mentally. I'm mentally scarred right now. That's how I feel. Because there are certain things that changed about me that might not go back." He also said, "Before I went to jail, I didn't know about a lot of stuff. And now that I'm aware, I'm paranoid. I feel like I was robbed of my happiness," Browder said in the New Yorker. Though Khalif's story was brought to light, and he was introduced to Jay-Z and Rosie O'Donnell, who both championed his success, it didn't stop the psychiatric hospital visits. He complained to relatives about feeling like the police were stalking him, and even took his TV out of his room because he said it was watching him. On June 6, 2015, at 12:15 p.m., Browder hanged himself from an air conditioning unit outside his mother's home. Khalif Browder did not deserve any of the abuse and treatment he received. The police failed him. The justice system failed him. The prison system failed him. And the state of New York failed him. The United States as a whole is still failing thousands of individuals every day. Khalif Browder may not be here in body, But it is the duty of us as a people to not let this be okay. 3.3 million, which was the settlement that Rikers paid to the estate of Kalief Browder, is not enough for his life. We have to hold people accountable. Penalize the people abusing their authorities. Create new laws, maybe even redesign all of the failing systems structurally. But do so and remember the name Kalief Browder. A few things have changed on Rikers, but that doesn't say a lot for everywhere else. Thank you.